Get more confidence. Get that promotion. Get moving up the corporate ladder. Get a better gig with an MBA from Mays Business School at Texas A&M University. Whether you're starting out or stepping up, now you can take your career to a whole new level with a full-time MBA in College Station and convenient weekend options at Houston City Center. Texas A&M has a program to suit your schedule. Visit mba.tamu.edu. And Giga Maggie.
Howdy, welcome to Mays MasterCast. I'm Shannon Deere, the Assistant Dean for Graduate Programs, here with your sparkly host, Ben Wiggins.
That's not the word.
I know, what is it? I can't remember it.
Coruscating.
I wanted you to be able to deliver the hard vocabulary word, and I just went with sparkly.
You tricked me. You totally tricked me.
Also, we found out that coruscating has a negative connotation of blowing things up. That's my summary of it.
Severely critical or scathing.
Oh, yeah. But also fiery version of sparkly. But I mean it in just the nice version of sparkly. So, hi.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful compliment. And it's a beautiful day in Aggie Land.
It's a beautiful day.
I still can't believe you tricked me into saying the word.
I also told you to trust me. So that might not have been a good move.
You did. You said trust me.
How are you?
Doing all right. How are you?
Doing all right. Today on the show, we have Todd Storch. Todd has over...
Super producer Scott Storch.
Of no relation to super producer Scott Storch. But Todd has over 25 years of business management and consulting experience, which makes him a much more reasonable guest to have on MasterCast. His experience is in bringing digital and interactive initiatives to fruition through leadership, strategic alliance, processes and technologies in industries such as media and entertainment. But Todd has shifted his career into the real estate industry. Just this summer, Todd was appointed as the CEO of 5-Star Global, a U.S. residential mortgage market, real estate, and mid-market mergers and acquisition organization. He's also held many other leadership roles. He has been the CEO of Kindred and has served as the co-founder and president of Taylor's Gift Foundation and served as the co-founder and president of Taylor's Gift Foundation until 2014. Taylor's Gift Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit focused on organ donation, and it was inspired by the loss of Todd's oldest daughter, Taylor, and the foundation now continues as Outlive Yourself Foundation. He began his career in accounting at Arthur Andersen and holds a degree in accounting from Mays Business School. So Todd is part of the family. He serves as an advisory board member for the Masters of Science in Marketing program at Mays. And he also, as he talked about on the show, has completed an Ironman and is an active member of his community and church. He and his wife, Tara, who you'll hear on the show at some point, have 3 children. Taylor, their oldest daughter, who was nearly 14 when she passed away in 2010, Ryan, and Peyton. We are so excited to welcome Todd to the show.
Yes. And apparently there's a Larry Storch also, which Larry Storch is 97 years old and is still going strong.
Rocking it out, Larry.
Yeah.
Nice work.
So anyway, this is a great discussion. Let's get into it.
We welcome Todd Storch to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic today, even though this is a podcast. It's a Monday, so I'm doing well. I'm doing well on the Monday. Off to a good start. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. Had some good time with the baby a few minutes ago, and ready to roll.
Awesome.
What is your favorite superpower?
Probably like a lot of people answer, right? I want to time travel. I want to fly. I want to be able to see the future. But I thought I think I'm going to have to say it, if I wish that I could, when I immediately meet somebody, that I know exactly what their strengths and what their weaknesses are. I think that would be an incredible superpower to be able to help get the best out of everybody that I'm around.
It sounds like you're an individualizer. Is individualization one of your strengths?
It is. It is in one of my top 5 strength finders. Number one would be responsibility. So that's why I was here 4 minutes early to our call.
Nice. Let's do our team building questions. Where did you grow up?
I answer that question that I grew up all over the place. I call San Antonio home because that's where I graduated from high school.
How many in your family?
So I have one brother. He's 5 years younger than I am, and he lives up in Oklahoma City. And his name's Terry. He's a super amazing guy. Married with 2 kids. But it's just me and Terry.
What was your greatest challenge as a child?
I think it was moving around as much as we did. My dad, people usually say, "Oh, you were military," and it seems like it. But my dad worked for, at the time, Southwestern Bell, which was eventually a part of AT&T. And that was a time that most of the times he got a promotion, kind of up his way through middle management. That involved moving somewhere. And so, every 2 to 4 years, the family would move towns and sometimes states. So being the new kid, having to understand what that's like and, find your way and figure out new schools. I don't know if I really knew it at the time that it was a challenge. I definitely remember moving away from, at the time it was Midland, Texas, and so I had my core group of 5th grade friends and, buddies forever. And so I remember that move being really hard.
Yeah.
But I think all that moving basically has helped me in the long term to just understand where people are coming from, understand what it's like to not have relationships, how to build relationships. But I remember stuff being pretty tough.
How has that impacted you as an executive and as a parent?
Yeah, that could be a whole podcast just in those kind of relationship building questions, right? But I think big picture, it comes down to business. It comes down to relationships. I mean, regardless of whatever business you're in and whatever your corporate goals and objectives are, it comes down to relationships, and even more specifically in that, it comes down to trust between people. So to me, a healthy organization begins with the right people, and they all trust each other so they can move forward. And then, from a family perspective, just being able to individualize with your kids and understand what they're going through. We never moved, but there's always new situations that, your kids are facing, and, just trying to help and guide them through that.
What was your first job?
First job, I mean, probably mowing or doing menial yard work was probably the first job. A lot of kids do that stuff. I think my first real job was, and it's a little bit embarrassing but fun all at the same time, but in San Antonio, Texas, I worked at Little Caesars Pizza, and this is when I think that there might have only been 3 in the country. And It was right down the street from my house. And what I loved about it is, getting that paycheck, and I was paying for new tires and stuff for my car. But yeah, I would say Little Caesars Pizza was probably one of my first paying official pay taxes gigs.
Yeah. Any funny stories from that?
Yeah, a lot of them I probably shouldn't repeat. When you're young and working in retail and fast food. But a lot of good times. Probably the thing I remember. One of the things I remember most about it was, I absolutely loved working. It wasn't that that was the greatest job in the world, of course, but it was just the accomplishment. And I remember. As I was getting ready to go to college, because this was in high school, the owner of the company, asked me if I wanted to come on as a manager. And I was like, well, I don't know how to do that because I'm about to go to college. And he's like, well, if this college thing doesn't work out, we really like it. And I always remember going, man, that was a really cool opportunity. But then it was what would have happened if for some reason I would have said yes? I just don't see that was in my future. So, that's a funny one for sure.
Give us 60 seconds on your road through Maze and after.
Yeah, so I'll kickstart it that it wasn't called Maze back in the day. When I was going through business school, it was in Blocker Building, and I always knew I was going to be a business major, and for some reason I knew that I was going to be an accounting major, and honestly, to this day, I still don't know where that came from. So I find that interesting, but A&M was fantastic. I actually transferred in my sophomore year, but knew I was always going to graduate from A&M. And so I, continued, started getting into my business classes, joined a business fraternity called Alpha Kappa Psi that was there at the time. It's not there now. I was really fortunate to get into an organization, CBA Fellows, which still exists. And we were Team 8 of CBA Fellows. And that opened up so many amazing opportunities. Got an internship and got offered a job. And so my senior year, I had a job waiting for me. I was one of the fortunate that had that, and had an amazing time, learned a whole bunch, and then started off my career in Dallas, Texas, working at a Big 8 accounting firm. With so much of that due to the opportunities that Texas A&M Business School gave me. Now Maze.
Fantastic. Accounting is not necessarily the most common field for a CEO to come from. How has beginning your career in accounting influenced your journey into the C-suite?
Yeah, when I think about in my mind, I was going to be a partner of an accounting firm. And back when I graduated in 1991, which feels like 1,000 years ago, it was the Big 8. And so that was the holy grail. They had great jobs, they had great paid internships. And that was just kind of what you wanted to do.
Right.
At least as an accounting major, I should say that. And what I learned very, very quickly was once I got into the career and started doing the job and just seeing, the ecosystem and just like what that was, I realized actually that I made a mistake. It's like, this is not the ladder that I'm really supposed to be climbing. And that was really scary. But to your point around the foundational piece of accounting, thank the good Lord that I have an accounting degree, because it's, understanding the numbers, balance sheets, P&L, all that stuff, just giving an understanding to me is just a language for every single business, period. Personal finance, anyway, so that was an amazing foundation to get. It's not what I practice, but to be able to, have those conversations, with my CFO and get an understanding of, what we need, where we should be going, at least being able to ask the questions. I may not know, all the details now that I might have known back then, but just to understand where we need to go. So much of that's rooted in the language of accounting. And so I'm very, I'm blessed by that.
You were recently appointed as CEO for 5-Star Global, which is, quote, a U.S. residential mortgage market, real estate, and mid-market mergers and acquisitions organization. Tell our listeners a little bit more about what the company spends its time doing. What do operations really look like?
Yeah, that was that's a little bit of a generic way to explain what this thing called 5-Star Global is, right? I mean, that's a big piece of the work that we're going to do. But 5-Star Global is a fantastic company. It's a private company. It's been around for nearly 20 years. But ultimately, we are a company that has trade associations and membership groups for all of the industries within real estate mortgage. And then also, we also have another division, a brand that specifically is a trade organization for the industry of mergers and acquisition. So what does that mean? So what that means is when you're in these industries, there's a lot of things that you need to continue to stay on top of. You want to network, you want to grow, you want to possibly meet other folks to do deals and just network. And so our responsibility is to make sure that our members and those industries, specifically now in real estate, mortgage, and mergers and acquisition, that we're providing them value to do the best that they can in their respective industries. And so, we do all kinds of things, from events to membership groups to digital publishing, and specifically right now in those two markets.
What do the events normally look like? Is it continuing I mean, is it like are they like conventions? Are they continuing education? What's the breadth of that particular piece of it?
Yeah, our largest event is actually coming up in mid-September, and you can imagine that it's not face-to-face this year, the first time ever going into a virtual environment. And so what that event looks like is thousands of people coming in from around the country that have multiple reasons for being there. The main one is to network, get educated, listen to amazing speakers, but it's all about human interaction, connection, and just understanding what's happening in the industry. We have lots of different membership groups. You may have a membership group that is very specific around just like the default side of mortgage, and that group of people will have a conference inside of our conference, right? Just to really speak really technical to them. So it's like Texas A&M University, right? You have 50,000+ people that are there, but you have all these subsections that are groups of people within a larger group, and that's what events look like.
What kind of executive onboarding process are you going through? You mentioned earlier some of the messaging that you wanted to address, and but let's talk about your on-ramping, so to speak.
Yeah, so that on-ramping, like a lot of things, is jump in, trial by fire, keep going.
Right.
I'm real fortunate. We have an amazing CFO and VP of operations, and so I'm spending lots of time, obviously, understanding the business, through those lenses and that information. We have a chairman emeritus that I spend time with. He's been with the company for almost since inception, but I spend a lot of time, having phone calls and video phone calls with him. But most importantly, right now, because I'm literally, like at the end of my third week, I'm spending a lot of time listening, employees, customers, top clients, and so I'm spending a lot of time listening right now at the same time while, thinking through the vision and where we're going to be heading.
Prior to this, you ran a nonprofit organization. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it shaped your journey into the for-profit world?
I might turn that question around and say, kind of going back to the business aspects of things, my knowledge, all the work that I did in for-profit, I think set me up to have quicker success in the nonprofit world. And what I mean by that is, there's a misnomer of people. There's a misnomer that nonprofits, mean, you don't have to worry about money. And it's the exact opposite. In fact, a lot of times it's a lot harder, because you're in fundraising mode. And if you don't have a product, you don't have a service like a lot of businesses does, then you're, what's your fundraising aspects? And so, I really buckled down when I had the thought and the dream and the desire to start a nonprofit. It began with a business plan, and a lot of times a nonprofit, it's just follow the passion, but maybe not a true business plan. Just to help that passion actually be successful, and that's fine. You always have to have passion projects, for sure. But I knew going into with my nonprofit, it was more than just a passion project, and I really had some goals that we wanted to accomplish. And so I think my business background really helped me with that. And then if you flip it the other way around, that's a whole other conversation, which is your original question. And that just comes down, to me, the stuff that you learn in a nonprofit just, is like, how do you do more with less? Scarcity is the mother of all invention. All those types of things. But then it comes down to people and like, what are we really doing here? And what impact are we really trying to make? Is that, do all employees understand that? Are we in alignment with everybody of the impact that we want to make? Is some of the impact we're making, what are the unintended consequences of those? And, having those conversations. So I think that human aspect plays a huge role.
what made the board of 5-Star Global come find you? Did they tell you what made you a candidate for the job?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So I don't have mortgage experience, and now I'm running a company that is hyper focused on mortgage and also M&A.
Right.
But I don't come from the mortgage background, and actually that was a strategic decision by the owners of the company, by the board, and ultimately, what I've had success in and what I love doing is I love building teams. I love building scalable operations. I love putting, to be very cliche, I love, putting the right people in the right seat, headed in the right direction. I love that. I love that. And also every business is really looking to make sure that they understand, are we fully understanding our digital capabilities, and how is that working with our audience? And I've done a lot of that as well. And so that was really some of the main reasons. Is, how do we take something that's just a really, really strong company and expand it to the future and look to guide some really good people and grow.
What is the biggest difference between the mortgage piece of the business and the M&A piece of the business in terms of how it influences your work, your company's operations?
From our company standpoint, regardless if it's mortgage, regardless if it's M&A, as we expand, it can be things different than that. It all revolves around basically one thing, and the thing that we want to do an amazing job and better than any other company in our space is we want to provide value to the individual member that joins our organization. And if we can stay hyper-focused around delivering amazing value, exceeding expectations of value for our members, we'll have a great future because, it's just basically the tenets of servant-based leadership. And that is, if we are serving and in the constantly thinking about being selfless and having empathy and wanting to understand what the needs are and external, our customers, then we won't be anything but successful, as long as we run good operations and all that. But it has to come down to the membership. And so there's lots of differences between those two industries. But it really comes down to, what value are we bringing to our customers?
I love that. You serve on the board for the Coppell Art, Cultural, and Heritage Foundation, as well as the Smart City Board for the City of Coppell, a city in the DFW Metroplex. Tell us about these organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. So two very distinct differences. But so in the city of Coppell, it's a suburb just a few miles away from DFW Airport on the northwest side of Dallas-Fort Worth, and amazing city of 40,000, 50,000, and I've raised my family there. The Art Center Foundation is to specifically help the brand new Coppell Art Center. We have a multi-million-dollar amazing art center right in the heart of Old Town Coppell, and so we have started a nonprofit. And so my work with the foundation was in establishing this nonprofit to understand the goals, to support and help support an amazing facility for the community. So that's one, and I love that. The other one on the Smart City Board, feeds a lot of my my business and technology passions, and smart cities are growing and they're necessary. Just the adoption of utilizing technology to improve the lives of citizens and all that entails. And so our goal with the Smart City Board is to basically deliver recommendation, strategic plan to just help the city of Coppell always be forward-looking, 20 years and beyond into the future as to what are going to be some of the obstacles and challenges and opportunities. So that's a great board and just another way for me to give back to a city that's giving me and my family a lot.
Tell us about the wisdom your grandfather imparted to you and how that impacts your leadership approach.
Oh my gosh. So, granddad, as I called him, is my dad's dad. And, boy, he's been a hero in my life. He passed away. He passed away actually when I was in college at A&M. And, but, to specifically answer the question around wisdom, I kind of boil all that down, and, I talk quite a bit about it. You can find out about that if you look me up. But, my grandfather would always say to me in one way or another that basically it's not what happens to you that matters, but how you react to it that does. And that was just a theme. And of course, as a kid growing up, I don't think I really understood it or realized, but it's just like water passing over a stone. At some point in time, this little bitty stream turns into a massive river, and it just kind of carves its way. And those words really, etched its way into my day, into my week, into my brain. So really, I lean on that from him a lot. That ultimately, the only thing that I really can't control is how I react to situations. All the rest of it, I don't control. And so, that plays a big role in my personal life and business too.
It's not terribly surprising to hear that coming from someone who loves endurance sports, has completed an Ironman as well as several half Ironmans and marathons. What got you into all of that?
It's because I'm a light switch guy. The switch is on and the switch is off, and my wife could tell you all about that. But I had a bucket list item, 15, 16, 17 years ago that I wanted to run a marathon. And a buddy of mine just completely out of the blue said, "Hey, I just signed up to take this 13-week, run a marathon, course or class." And I was like, "Hey, I'll do that with you." And because I want to run a marathon. And then the dominoes just started falling. When you don't just train to run a marathon, you train to run a 5K. And then after you run a 5K, you got to run a 10K. And after you run a 10K, then you're shooting for a half marathon. And then it's like, all right, how do I start beating the times and run more? And then after I finished the marathon, that wasn't enough for me. It's like, I can do a marathon, I can do an Ironman. So what's that process look like? So it was about a decade of an amazing journey, super intense, basically adding a full-time job on top of a full-time job. It was an awesome time.
I'm really glad you enjoyed it. What surprised you the most during the course of that journey? What was most unexpected?
It's just ultimately, there's not much we as human beings can accomplish if we decide we want to do it. I talk to people that are just like, how in the world did you do that? And it's like, it just comes down to training. I mean, the body can withstand it. As soon as you finish an Ironman, I mean, my next step was, how do we go do ultra Ironmans? How do we go run 100 miles? How do we bike 1,000 miles? It was just like this nonstop craving to like push, yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, I had an injury where I had to take about a year off after my Ironman, so that I didn't, I think that saved me from going, from peeling that onion back or jumping down that rabbit hole. But I just think, we as human beings, once we set a goal for ourselves, it's pretty amazing what we can accomplish.
No question. How did your successes and possibly your failures in your endurance training prepare you for other challenges in life?
Well, as an athlete yourself, there's tons of failures, right? I mean, there was for me. I'm not going to project on you, but there's all kinds of stuff that you don't do well,
right,
that you really wanted to. And I mean, there's one particular outcome to my Ironman journey that I think was a massive disappointment, but probably one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. so I went in being the competitor that I am, just thinking, if I just train a certain way, then I'm going to get a certain result, right? If I do a little bit better tomorrow, then I'm going to have a little bit better result. And you don't completely believe that because of a lot of factors, but that is an overriding driving factor in my personality type. What that led to throughout my years long training to do an Ironman is I had a goal in mind of what I was going to finish that Ironman in time wise. It's like, how do I do this in less than 9 hours, which is a ridiculous feat. And that caused me to overtrain. And what overtrain does is that you get injured. And when you get injured, you can't train as much, and then it becomes a spiral. So my 9-hour goal was gone. I injured myself about 30 days before the event, to the point of like, am I even going to be able to do this event? And I had to have conversations with physicians and trainers and all that kind of stuff, and made the decision, yeah, I'm going to do this thing. So then the goal became, how do I finish? That finish versus a time goal was a major loss for me. Like I literally grieved what I couldn't achieve. And that was hard because you're with your buddies and everybody's got their goals, and all of a sudden you're not a part of that club. You're like, oh, geez, I just got to finish this stupid thing. And so to answer your question, just being able to deal with what life gives you in your moment, and how do I control what's in front of me versus what I can't? I think that prepared me a lot, in a lot of different ways for, the grief journey of, the loss of my daughter and loss of Taylor, and, what you thought it was going to be isn't. And how do you walk through that? Yeah, so I think it played a huge factor in my journey for sure.
Tell us a little bit more about what happened with Taylor.
Yeah. So Taylor, so I have 3 kids, and Taylor's my oldest. And then 2 years behind Taylor is Ryan, who, by the way, shout out, is a senior at Texas A&M this year in Mays Business School, Business Honors.
Fantastic.
And my daughter, 2 years behind Ryan, Peyton, is a sophomore at Texas Tech, getting into their amazing nursing program. Not a slide at A&M, but that's where she chose to go. That's a whole other grieving process, but very proud of her. Love it. I joke, but no, we're super happy for her. But Taylor, so Taylor in 2010 is when Taylor passed away, and she was 13 years old, and we were out skiing for spring break, and it was the very last run of the very first day of our skiing spring break, and I was with Taylor, and Ryan was with me as well. And, Taylor slipped, and she went into the trees and had an accident. And from that accident, we lost her, and she passed away. And, from going from the most, amazing, awesome spring break day, seeing your kids do this stuff and the majesty of the mountains and snow, to like your worst nightmare in a split second. You don't take classes to prepare for that. I mean, there's nothing that you do that's like, hey, one day you're going to be dealing with this. But, Taylor passed away, and she was 13, and, the next, something beautiful, we didn't know it at the time, but, we got asked a question that we never thought we would ever hear in our lives, nor were we prepared for. But that question was, your daughter is a beautiful candidate to be an organ donor, and would you consider donating her organs? And I can remember exactly where I was sitting, and where my wife, Tara, who's an Aggie, by the way, too, was sitting. And I just looked at Tara, and we knew the answer, and I just answered for us. It's like, absolutely, Taylor would definitely do that. And she went on to save and improve the lives of, many people with a heart transplant and kidney transplant and a cornea transplant, and save and improve the lives of amazing individuals that we actually got to meet. So that's just a little bit about Taylor.
Well, I'm very sorry for your loss, but I am really happy that that you were able to help those people as a result of that terrible tragedy. You said,
I appreciate it. Absolutely.
You founded the Taylor's Gift Foundation with your wife Tara in 2010. After her passing, can you tell us about the mission of Taylor's Gift?
Yeah, absolutely. When you think about the business side of things, our family had never prepared for organ donation. We never had a conversation in our family. We never sat around the dinner table and just said, "Hey, what do you guys think about organ donation? I'm registered. Let's talk about it." Like, never, ever, ever, ever did that. And thank goodness that I answered the question yes to organ donation, because it actually provided hope in a tremendously, awful situation. And so that, once I started doing some research, and we came back, and we were in Colorado, and we came back to Texas where we lived, and I started doing research around organ donation, because I just had this, it was a glimmer of hope. And what I found out very, very quickly is that in the state of Texas, back in 2010, in a room of 100 people, only 2 people were registered to be an organ donor. And quite frankly, it made me mad. It caused, just this, you've got to be kidding me reaction. That makes no sense. And then so I started asking, those questions, be careful what you ask, which is why. And, you started to peel back the why if only 2% of Texans were registered. At the time, only 34% of, the United States adults 18 plus were registered. And that became, the single-minded focus of wow, I see what answering that question yes did for our family. And then all these other folks, why in the world is this not happening? Why are people not saying yes? Or, why are they not registering to be an organ donor? And so our mission was basically, how do we register as many people as possible? And we did that through all kinds of storytelling and digital marketing. And, that wasn't our first mission, but that's what it became very, very quickly. And that was an amazing nonprofit that did really amazing things.
How did taking that action impact the journey through your terrible grief at losing your daughter?
I think the best way I can answer that question, and one of the biggest things that I learned, is because I never studied grief. The grief that I had experienced in life, although I thought it was a lot, it obviously wasn't in comparison. But probably the biggest thing that I've learned, that I would really want to make sure that if anybody happens to listen to this, probably the biggest thing that I would share with people is that every single person going through grief does it in their way. There's no playbook. There's no right way to grieve. Conversely, there's really no wrong way to grieve. There's wrong choices within that. But my grief journey looked so much different than Tara, my wife's grief journey, and that caused friction early. But thank goodness our relationship, and through others, we learned that a part of this journey was us recognizing we're going to do it differently. To be very specific, I wanted to surround myself with people. I wanted to be around Taylor's friends. I wanted to just pour into the community. And Tara was in a moment of, where she needed to retreat. She needed to be away from all that, because that hurt her, but it fed me. And just recognizing those things become a huge, it becomes crucial in a relationship, and communication, and then through your own grief process. So that is huge. Just Tara and I giving each other the grace, to make those choices, was a big part in, helping to save our marriage during a very troubling time.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Let's move to rapid fire. What is something you're really interested in that people might be surprised by, even after everything we've already said?
About me personally, something that might be surprised by, probably that I'm a diehard heavy metal fan, that I play guitar and drums. I am an abstract expressionist painter. I've got this huge creative side. That would probably be one of the biggest ones.
If you wrote an autobiography, what would you call it?
Oh, it would be my grandfather's days. It's not what happens to you that matters. It's how you react to it that does.
Anyone you would like to send some good bull?
Absolutely. So I already gave a shout out to my son, Ryan. Really proud of him. He is he's a Maroon coat. And so I think it's a good goal to go out to Ryan and all the new Maroon coats that are out there, class of 2021. But another shout out has to go to Dr. Eli Jones. I've gotten to know Dr. Jones with my work at A&M, but with what he and all leadership educators are dealing with COVID, the pandemic, and just all the changes in order to to pull off the university experience and keep kids and everybody safe. I think all of us owe leaders, a big thank you. There are lots of leaders are in no-win situations right now, and I think they need to be lifted up. And specifically, Dr. Jones, I think, is doing a great job for the Mays Business School.
Dean Jones, great friend of the show. Todd, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you joining us, and thank you for those very honest answers.
Yep, I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me, and hope you have an awesome day.
Same to you.
We hope you enjoyed the show and found as many insights as we did into Todd's story, not only on business, but about grief as well. We appreciate Todd being on the show and being so vulnerable and telling us about his story, which I know will help many others. For our MasterCast top 3 takeaways, I want to start with talking about overtraining. He talked about how he overtrained for the Ironman and then had an injury which almost cost him being able to even participate in the Ironman. I'm amazed that he was able to, within 30 days, recover enough to even participate. But I thought that was a really good analogy for overtraining at work, or overworking, really, that we work ourselves so much that we end up, maybe not a physical injury, most likely for most of us, but certainly some wear and tear that might make us not hit some of the time goals or some of the productivity goals or quality of product when we overtrain or overwork at work.
Mm-hmm. As you said, definite health consequences, wear and tear, but eventually, football coaches, famous overworkers, are also famous for dying young.
Yeah.
And I don't wish that on anybody, obviously, but it is a thing that happens. You do 100-hour weeks for long enough and it will kill you.
Yeah. I think too, the work is one thing, but the extra cortisol from stress and the maybe weight gain that might cause, or the high blood pressure, or the, just the many different, it's not only just about the overworking, but all of the other things that has an impact on in our lives, the lack of sleep, everything else that really comes with that overworking that then results in us not actually being as good as we could have been had we trained or worked maybe more steadily.
Yeah.
For our second takeaway, that leads us into this conversation about grief. First, Todd talked about grieving only finishing the Ironman and not achieving his time goal, which I thought was so interesting. I think it's easy to say, Todd, get over it. You finish an Ironman. Like, no one else I know has ever done that. But it also shows how important it is, or how impactful it is, to set expectations for ourselves and then not meet those, and how hard that can be, that he didn't meet this expectation or this goal that he had set for himself, even if we say, wow, you still accomplished something really great. And I think a lot of us do that at work or in life, where maybe it wasn't exactly what we wanted to achieve, but it was still really amazing. And if we're not careful, we can sell ourselves short of that opportunity to celebrate.
It reminds me of if you shoot for the moon and land among the stars, and then you're disappointed with the stars, what have you really bought for yourself?
Yeah.
I think one of the really good things about coming to, I think as a society, we're definitely making positive progress toward the way we process failure and understanding that failure is frequently not final. Is I would say more often than not, far more often than not, it is not final. And learning to be comfortable with the process of learning from failure and appreciating the things that we did achieve in the process. That's so important. And it sounds like Todd learned a lot during that.
For our third takeaway, of course, the grief became magnified in a much different way when his daughter Taylor then passed away. And even in relative to losing a child, this relatively small loss of the Ironman really helped him to then prepare for the grief of losing Taylor. I thought was, like you said, honored what he thought was a failure, right? That we take this failure and use it to learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's beautiful. But certainly Taylor's story of that final selfless act of their family and of Taylor of organ donation was so powerful and meaningful. I also really appreciated what Todd said about how differently different people grieve and how he and his wife Tara had to respect each other's approach to grieving or the way that they grieved. I think we oftentimes are quick to judge the way that people are grieving, or I don't know that I would do that, and that can come with some judgment, and how important it is to remind ourselves and each other that we all respond differently to loss and grieve differently, and how beautiful it was that they were able to see that in each other. That loss of a child can be so hard on a marriage, but for them to really come together and respect each other's differences in that moment was a beautiful thing too.
It just may have been the most important thing because, as you said, the loss of a child, like that is a death knell for many marriages. And the fact that they were able to come through that together and not just survive as a couple, but thrive in the face of a terrible tragedy that's really a tribute to how well they found each other. And the idea that, that grief stories are so different is, that absolutely resonates with me. I know if anything tragic ever happened in our family, my grief journey would look very different from my wife's.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I want to give good bull to Daryl and Betsy Boudreau. They're some friends of ours who Daryl and I went to A&M together, and their daughter Adelaida passed away a few years ago, and they just had their second child, Alexi, and we're so happy for them. They're so excited. And it's also, a challenging moment, of course, with the grief of Adelaida mixed in with the joy of Alexi. It's beautiful to watch them and their marriage as well move through that grief and how they've supported each other and loved each other. And I'm just really grateful for them and the example that they've provided others as well.
Mm-hmm. Good bull.
Good bull. Ben, you want to close us with a quote?
I would love to close us with a quote. I would rather be ashes than dust. I would rather that my spark would burn out in a brilliant blaze than be stifled by dry rot. I would rather be a superb meteor, every atom of me in magnificent glow, than a sleepy and permanent planet. Jack London.
That's awesome. My granddad is 98 years old, and he always says it's better to burn out than rust out. So keep moving.
Yep.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Shannon. Thank you for listening.
An MBA from Texas A&M University can take your career to a whole new level. With full-time and weekend options, Texas A&M suits your schedule. So get a better gig. Visit mba.tamu.edu.
Looking to start a podcast? Trying to tackle questions like, how do I record? How do I edit? How can I get music for my show? What equipment do I need? How do I distribute it? Good news. The podcast architects are here to help. Whether that's from start to finish, fixing the audio quality, helping you get the episodes posted, go to podconsulting.co. Everyone has something worth sharing with the world.